Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast for Friday, June the 13th. Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris on this rainy Friday the 13th. I didn't know it was Friday the 13th until I turned my, ripped off my dad joke calendar this morning. And then I looked outside and it was like
that is
pitch
just
black.
so on brand for you.
What do you call a fear of giants? That was today's joke. What do you call a fear of giants?
Brian Dable?
Fee-fi phobia. He's just staring a hole at me.
Yeah, like I'm a dad. Rod's a dad.
You haven't been a dad long enough.
We don't approve
though.
that.
You'll get there.
Rod's been a dad longer than all of us.
I have no idea what that means.
Fee-fi fo-fum, fee-fi phobia. If you got to explain them,
Let's move on.
Yeah, all right.
Let's move on.
It's time to recap minicamp. It's the off season. What are we telling dad jokes? Okay. Luckily, it did not rain the last few days, although we probably would have welcomed it some of those days. The Saints finished up practice on Wednesday. They were supposed to practice Thursday, but Kellen Moore gave them the day off, and they went to golf at 5:04 instead. And I think that's good. I kind of like that. I like giving, a lot of teams do that, Matt, but I kind of like giving the last day of minicamp off to a team that's been working in the heat all week, and why not?
Yeah, I'm sure Alvin Kamara appreciated it. They went to his business, so, pay on the back end. Kellen Moore.
A little extra bonus.
Yeah.
That's written into his contract. Yeah.
It's like never mind. I'm not going to
All team activities will be conducted at 5:04 golf.
I have
per the terms of Alvin Kamara's recent extension.
Yeah, so, Kellen Moore liked the work that they got out of the 2 days. It's weird. I think I wrote this earlier this week, but to me, Kellen Moore is like trying to strike a balance, right? Like he's trying to push these guys as hard as they can. They practice in noon outside, like for the 2 days, so build up like the character and withstand the conditions. But yet they don't really do any 11-on-11 stuff. It's all 7-on-7. They to have punted practice a few times to do like community stuff and team bonding activities. And so it's really trying to strike a delicate line. And I think it's a smart approach.
Well, like what are some of the things we've talked about in recent years, right?
Yeah.
It's like the culture eroding in the building. I think part of that is you want to get your guys to trust each other, to know each other. And I think like an easy way to do that, an obvious way to do that is to set up time for them to hang out where it's not like strictly football related. So like it makes sense, and especially for like a first time head coach, like it's just like feels like something that you just kind of bake in and be like, okay, we want our team to be tighter, more unified. Like what's a way we can do that? Like this feels like an obvious way to do it without telling them like come in like, hey, the practice runs through Thursday, but like if you want to come back on Friday, we're gonna go out and hit balls at 5:04 golf. I mean, give them a day off. That feels good for them. You get to have Hunter Deckers shoot a 3-pointer to get the team all excited and get them rallying behind the undrafted rookie quarterback. It's just like it makes a lot of sense. We'll see if it actually pays any dividends, but like I think for a team that has been, for the last couple of years, we've talked about like the culture erosion. I think this is just part of trying to build that back up.
I didn't really understand why Juwan Johnson, who picked who was going to shoot the 3-pointer, why do you pick Hunter Deckers and not Michael Jacobson, who is a really good basketball player?
Well, I think Hunter Deckers was a pretty decorated high school basketball player.
Jacobson's like a bruiser inside, right? I don't know.
No, he's like a 3-point
shoot
shooter.
threes?
Yeah,
Okay.
He shot like 40%.
That is interesting.
Oh, well then.
Yeah, I mean, he's like,
That's just not
he
knowing
sits right by Juwan and locker.
not knowing your personnel. We've seen that with the Saints before.
By the way, speaking of that, quick promo, NOLA.com/Saints. You got to scroll down a little bit, but Rod wrote a column. Michael Jacobson was college teammates with Tyrese Halliburton in NBA Finals Game 4 tonight. So if you want to get ready for that.
Yeah, and it was fun. I wrote that on right before Game 1, and Halliburton delivers. So it was pretty impressive. And they played two years together at Iowa State. And you looked at their roster, man, they had like 4 guys who made it to the NBA. And Jacobson didn't make it, obviously, and they got upset in the first round that year by Ohio State or something. And it was just kind of crazy how much talent they had on that team. But
yeah, it's funny how looking back at changes like that. Is this Hunter Decker's greatest moment as a Saint? Will it be his greatest moment as a Saint? Some are asking.
I think it's
definitely the greatest moment
probably
so
safe
far.
to say, yeah. Nothing against Hunter Deckers, but like I don't think he's beaten out the other inexperienced guys they have on the roster.
Yes. We will talk about that in a minute, but first off, any other big picture takeaways, guys, from minicamp, OTAs, just the way things are run by this coaching staff or scheme or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it looks different. I wrote about that today in my kind of off-season recap over at NOLA.com. You can go read it right now. From the structure of practice to the tempo of practice to the drill work they're doing to just the schemes in general, I think it looks different, which is just kind of refreshing to see around here. I mean, this will be my 8th season covering the Saints, and it's looked pretty much the exact same the entire time, outside of like that 2-month stretch that Darren Rizzi was a head coach last year. So I think that can be a good thing. Obviously, they had a ton of success with Sean Payton, and there was a reason they kept doing the same thing over and over. But I think it is nice to have just a little bit of reset, just in like just the basic level stuff you're doing. I think that can pay some dividends down the road.
You can tell everybody's in a pretty good mood, which you expect this time of the year with a new coach, and everybody's saying the right things. And so, I mean, that's all good right now. That's what you want to see in June.
Yeah, look, change brings energy sometimes. You feel it in your own life if you just rearrange the furniture in the living room and things feel different. So I think that may be what we're feeling. How long that lasts may depend on how the Saints play.
Yeah, I mean, this season is probably going to be challenging for them. And so can they keep the morale high as if the losses start to pile up? I don't know, but, right now you've got to at least go into it with the right attitude, and that's what we're seeing so far.
Okay, so let's get into the quarterbacks, because that's always the first thing people want to talk about. It's the most consequential storyline of this offseason.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about it into September.
Yeah,
so.
probably through the preseason and maybe even into week 1 or afterward. Tyler Shough, the 40th overall pick, second round pick. I think we kind of had tabbed as the favorite going into OTAs. Spencer Rattler has been more impressive in OTAs. That's not controversial to say? Maybe it is.
I would say so, but
I think, I think from like a high level view, yes. But I do think that we've seen like enough out of Shough to know that he really merits being in this conversation with Spencer Rattler, and the mere fact that this regime drafted him where they did, I think gives him a leg up in this. But he does have to show more once training camp comes around, if that makes sense.
yeah, I don't know if it's more impressive, but Rattler has been the better quarterback through this stretch.
Yeah.
But I think you look at the way Tyler Shough has grown already through some of this camp, or like through mandatory minicamp compared to where he was at in OTAs. I think that gap is already closing, and by the time a decision has to be made of who's going to be the starter, I don't think I'm going to change my mind that Tyler Shough is still going to win this job. But I will say I've been pleased with the way Rattler's performed, and I feel like maybe not that I was overlooking Spencer Rattler, but his performance reminded me that you should at least take him seriously in this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, too. I think if you asked me right after the draft who was going to start, I'd have been like, oh, Tyler Shough's going to start. But now I do think it's a true competition, and I think right now Rattler's done enough where if they had a game tomorrow, I think Rattler's probably the starter just because he's been here a year and he has that extra year of experience, and and Shough probably could overtake him, but I just feel like right now Spencer Rattler's a little bit ahead of him. Just a little bit.
These preseason games are going to be fascinating, how they split up time and how much they put stock into those performances, because I do think it goes into the preseason. I keep thinking back to last year when we were talking at this same time right after minicamp, and like Jake Haener was pretty demonstrably ahead of Spencer Rattler at that time. And then that changed, and in training camp they looked really close and through the preseason. And Haener won the number 2 job, but when it came time that they needed a replacement at number 1 for Derek Carr, Rattler had kind of passed Haener by that point. And I think that Shough is kind of dealing with that same rookie tax at this time of year.
That's exactly the way I put it. Yeah. Like when you're watching Shough, I think you can see the traits, right? And that's important. I think his best throws in this OTA and minicamp phase have been incompletions, because you're just watching the placement on the ball, like the zip he has on the ball, and you're like, man, that looks really good. It wasn't a completion, but that Matt posted a video of an incomplete pass he threw to Brandon Cooks. I mean, it was an outbreaking route. It was about 10 yards deep. Those are really, really difficult throws to make in the NFL, and not everybody could put the ball where Tyler Shough put it. But when you're watching it, it's incomplete because he threw it after Cooks made his break. Right? So it's stuff like that where when you're looking at these two going head to head, I think Rattler is very, very clearly more comfortable in getting the ball out on time, where it's supposed to go, etc. Right? Like it's not as much thinking about like when to make the throw. He's like making it in rhythm, which is what he struggled with last year at this time. It's what you'd expect a rookie to struggle with. But I also think that like Rattler's made a couple like turnover worthy throws. I don't think we've seen that out of Shough. And
he's had an interception, but yeah,
right. But
Rattler's
like
had more.
It's more of them. There was I think just in minicamp he had one that was almost picked off by Jonas Sanker and OTAs when he didn't layer it over that kind of second level of defense on like kind of a deep over route to Juwan Johnson, and there was another one in red zone where Kool-Aid McKinstry made a play on the ball, probably should have intercepted it. So I think we've seen less of that out of Shough, but I think he's been less decisive, which is like what you'd expect. So if he is able to take that jump that, frankly, Spencer Rattler took last year between OTAs and training camp, and if by the end of training camp he's able to show he's improved in that area to where you feel comfortable with him being the starter, I think he's the guy. But I don't like to y'all's point. I don't think you can write off Spencer Rattler at all. I think I'm pretty close to writing off Jake Haener as like a viable option in this competition, even though Kellen Moore's been very careful to say it's like kind of going to be a three-man competition. I have a hard time seeing Haener win that. But like, I feel to me it's still the edge is kind of towards Shough, assuming he's going to make some progress in the next couple months, if that makes sense.
Whatever. If they play the first game tomorrow, though, who do you think will be the starter?
First game tomorrow would be Spencer Rattler. Yeah. And part of this too is like we haven't seen these guys navigate under pressure or with like a defense that's trying to confuse them, right? Like the Saints defense is learning that defense too. Yeah, they're going to be going up against what's the Cardinals head coach's name?
Oh, Jonathan Gannon.
Jonathan Gannon, right? He's a defensive-minded head coach in week one. They got a bunch of new players on that defense in Arizona as well, but like they're going to try to scheme up some funky stuff for him. Like he's got to show he can navigate that stuff and navigate pressure. We haven't seen that at all because they've only done 7-on-7. So like there's a lot that's still to be learned out of this. I think Rattler's ahead right now, but if Shough can make a little bit of a jump from now to training camp, which you kind of expect on that kind of rookie learning curve, then I think he's still going to be the guy.
The pressure point is huge because that's where Spencer Rattler's game really, it kind of fell apart last year. Not that he folded under pressure a bit, but you think about his best throws, a lot of them were on the move, designed rollouts. I think the impressive thing about him this offseason is that a lot of the plays have been in the pocket, but it's easy to stay in the pocket when you're not facing pressure. So, I think that's going to be a huge area to monitor with Spencer Rattler. How the preseason games themselves, how he performs. Well, you're not going to get a first and second half in the preseason, but I looked this up the other day. Spencer Rattler's first half rating, passer rating,
drastic,
103.5. I think his second half, it's in the 40s.
I think
it's
it was 47.
Yeah, 47.6.
Yep.
And the completion percentage in those halves too is just as drastic, and that's including the game where he came.
The Washington game.
That includes the Washington game where he was like awesome in the second half. That's because maybe he didn't play the first. Like there's something going on there where he is a completely different quarterback as the game goes on, and you just need more consistency from him if he's actually going to win this job.
I think if Shough can make up the gap in processing ability that Rattler seems to be ahead in right now, then Shough wins the job. Yep. It's U.S. Open weekend, so I'm going to use a golf analogy. Like it feels like Rattler's leading right now, but it's like Scotty Scheffler's 3 shots back, and it's still Friday, and you're like, yeah, that guy feels like he's coming.
Moving day's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also totally conceivable that, like, yeah, they put him in these pressure situations, and that experience from last year really helps Spencer Rattler, and he's much better than Tyler Shough in those situations, and they stick with Rattler as a starter.
Yeah, could be.
I would have a hard time believing, though, that if Spencer Rattler does win the opening day week 1 starter job, that he stays in that all year. I think they got to see what they have at some point in Shough this year, unless he obviously leads them to the playoffs or something like that.
Well, look at the first 4 weeks. You mentioned Arizona. Then you got San Francisco's got all kinds of talent on its defense. Then you're at Seattle, another defensive-minded head coach. Then you're at Buffalo. Like, whoever starts the season is really going to get tested right away. So you could certainly see one guy start the season, probably be Rattler, and then after 4 tough weeks, maybe they say, okay, it's time to try Tyler Shough. So last word on this. More or less optimistic about the quarterback situation in general than you were before OTAs?
I'm probably a little bit more optimistic, but then I always go back to like what we actually saw in OTAs, which is not much. I mean, it's like watching flag football almost. So, but I am more optimistic than I was because of the strides that I think Spencer Rattler's made. I think that makes me a little bit more optimistic about it because it makes it more of a true quarterback competition. I think that's going to make them better.
Guys?
Same. Nothing's changed for me. I think the only thing that would have made me feel worse about it is if Shough was out there throwing ducks the whole time, and he wasn't. I think that's really clear with both of these guys. They have the arm talent, but it requires so much more to play quarterback effectively in the NFL than being able to drop a dime from 30 yards out. So I feel just completely unmoved by it. I saw what I needed to see, but it wasn't so drastically good that I feel way better about it. And I'm just really keeping my mind open until training camp starts.
I would agree with all of that. I'm about the same too. I think the one thing we haven't said is if it is close by the end, I think I would still lean Shough because he has that handpick factor, as Luke mentioned, and then also it's probably just more beneficial for the Saints in the long run to see what they have out of Shough and a full season's worth of games.
Yeah, as we said, I think Rattler has to win it clearly.
Yeah.
Right. And right now maybe he is, but not clearly enough to where I wouldn't still make Shough the favorite for week 1. So, all right, that's quarterbacks. We'll get into everything else. First, we're going to take a quick break here on the Saints Insider. More minicamp takeaways right after this.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. With quick picks, you can tap right into pre-built, ready-to-bet parlays right from the home screen. And if you miss tip-off, no worries. You can play same-game parlays live during the action. Plus, it's never been easier to find and bet on the biggest matchups of the day, so you can keep up with all the action. Caesars Sportsbook, proud partner of the NBA and the only sportsbook app with Caesars Rewards. Download it today.
And welcome back to the Saints Insider. Today's Friday, June the 13th. Appreciate you all tuning in. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, Saints at NOLA.com, or you can just search Saints Insider. Sign up for notifications. The schedule is going to be a little bit lighter over the next 6 weeks for us as well as the Saints, just probably one show a week until we get closer to training camp. So hit the notifications. You'll know when we go live. Also got some good mini camp footage that Norm shot that we'll post some short stuff too, so you can check that stuff out. And appreciate the like, the subscribe, all of that stuff. More mini camp takeaways, guys. Let's stick with the offense, but outside of the quarterbacks. What stuck out? Go ahead, Rod.
I don't want to steal Luke's whatever he was going to say. For me, I think it was just the offensive line and just seeing the consistency there, because I thought it was going to be a little bit more shuffling around maybe at this point, like seeing where Kevin Banks fits, where Trevor Penning fits. But it seems like they're kind of set on how they want to, try this thing out, and seeing Trevor Penning move inside to guard, and so to me that's what kind of stood out, just how they're kind of seem like they're kind of set on what they want to do there.
Yeah, we haven't seen them any contact, so maybe that changes. But I do think if they were still experimenting, you would have seen at least some movement.
Yeah, and I think there's a good point by Rod. I think we were all going into this expecting that, right? To see a little Fuaga at left and Banks at right, a little Banks at guard. Where were they going to put Trevor Penning? Are they going to try him out in different spots? And I think the fact that they've stayed with it consistently throughout this entire off-season phase makes me feel like they feel pretty confident that's going to be their starting 5, barring injury, going into the season. which I like. I think after like thinking it over and watching it a couple times, like I really like the idea of Trevor Penning at guard. I think it makes a lot of sense to see if Fuaga can be even better than he was when he was really solid as a rookie left tackle at a more natural position. And if Banks is like as a top 10 pick going to step in right away and be like at least an average starting NFL left tackle, like number 16, I think they'd feel really, really, really good about that. And really the direction of their line in general. So I agree with that. I think it was really nice just to see Olave and Shaheed back out there making plays. I think they're clearly going to be like a focal point of this offense. And we've seen Kellen Moore just historically over his time as a play caller use his best players to his advantage and scheme stuff up toward them and really have his scheme be dependent on his personnel. And I think those two guys are clearly their best offensive weapons, and they're going to find a way to get them the football, which should be exciting as long as they stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big one is Olave and Shaheed raise the ceiling of this team so much if they're healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the rest of the receivers have, I was actually I thought Brandon Cooks looked pretty solid.
Yeah,
He can
I
give
agree.
them another element. Bub Means, I thought, has shown some really nice progress. Like we talked about Gabe Davis earlier in the week. Was that
Earlier in the
this
week,
Yeah,
yeah.
earlier in the week. Lose track of time.
Yep.
And he wasn't out. They haven't signed him. I just don't know. I think they need size at that position, but I think what they have right now is pretty solid. What stood out to me though was kind of the opposite of the offensive line. I feel like the defense has really experimented with where guys are lining up in terms of versatility, trying out different spots, whether Brian Brzee in nickel or at defensive tackle and nickel versus base defensive end. Tyrann Mathieu was running with the twos during mandatory minicamp a lot, which I thought was pretty interesting. Some of that may just be probably is just because he missed the voluntary portion, so he's just getting up to speed and was on a bit of a pitch count. But I don't know, is safety more of an open competition than we're thinking? I could also just see the competitions on this roster kind of starting to crystallize. Like running back, backup running back anyway, is a huge one. The lower tier receiver spots, safety, I think now that's a little bit more clear to me.
You skipped ahead to defense, but that's good. That's where we were going.
Sorry.
It's I was gonna
defensive
stop
takeaways.
him, but I just let him
fine.
go. Once
We'll slide
Matt
right
gets
into
rolling,
defense,
you
that's
can't
cool.
you can't
Yeah.
slow him down.
I need to look at the slides ahead of time, apparently.
No, it's but in all seriousness, on the defensive side of the ball, even in a mini camp setting, man, you could see some big time differences.
Yeah. I mean, for one, you got Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson and Chase Young out there in 7-on-7s. Like we haven't seen that before. I mean, it's been a long time since Cam's done 7-on-7s. Probably
I think somebody asked me about that.
Yeah,
the other day.
Rob Ryan, he did a little bit of it, but he's he's done more. He said he's done more in this mini camp than he's done since junior high school.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
so-
with his blonde dreadlocks, blonde's not even the right
No,
color.
it's
they're
gray.
platinum silver is the color.
Is that the color? Okay.
Yeah.
I was just going with gray.
It's
but-
Targaryen silver from Game of Thrones.
Right.
colorblind,
Right.
though, Yeah.
I mean, the structure of this defense is obviously so different, and I think that's going to be at the very least interesting to see how it all plays out, right? I think there's some possibility for this scheme to really fit what guys do well, but that's also just a lot of projecting, right? Like you could see Chase Young and Carl Granderson in stand up roles and that being beneficial to him. Granderson's going to weigh about 15 pounds less than he did last year. Didn't have a chance to talk to Chase Young about it, but he definitely looks like a slimmed down version. Maybe allowing them to play a more natural weight that allows them to take advantage of their athleticism a little bit more. I don't know really how much I want to see them in coverage. That big completion to Xavier Valade on a wheel route was Chase Young running about 4 yards behind their fifth string running back in coverage. Don't really want to see that too much, but if they can get more out of them as pass rushers when they're not asking them to like set the edge against the run as much as they were doing before, I think that can be a positive. I think it can be a positive to have Brian Brzee playing head up on a tackle instead of getting double teamed by the guard and center, or the guard and tackle. Like I think that's going to open up one-on-one opportunities for him to win in pass rush and maybe eliminate some of his deficiencies as a run defender. I think you can see in the differences ways that this can be beneficial for him. I don't think they're going to be like a top 12 defense. I definitely don't think they're going to be like bottom 3 like they were last year.
Yeah, I was worried about the way some of these pieces fit in this defense, and I guess, Rod, in a way I still am. But you can also see flashes of, Brian Brzee is a good example of where maybe it does help somebody quite a bit.
Yeah, and I mean that'll be the biggest. I mean, we talk about the quarterback, but for me that's going to be the biggest thing. We'll be talking about this during training camp, like once they put pads on and start, really going at it, like just see how these guys adjust to these new roles. But for me on the defense, I think a guy who's really stood out has been Justin Reed. I just think he's going to add something to that secondary, and I don't know what I was expecting from him, but just kind of seeing him in person and in the little that we've seen, I've been impressed with what I think he can bring, and I think him and Tyron can really shore up that secondary.
One of the things I'm interested to see once they start doing more competitive 11-on-11 stuff is, look, they weren't really like a super. I could be wrong on this. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but I don't think their blitz rate was. I think they were probably bottom third of the league in that under Dennis Allen. I think they wanted to play a lot of man coverage with a lot of, let the front four win, and I just don't think they had the personnel to do that. Whereas with this, I think they're going to be isolating guys more in like one-on-one situations, and they're going to be bringing pressures from different parts of the field and trying to disguise their looks, which I think that could help their pass rush out too. So, I'm like really excited to see what this looks like in practice once they've got pads on and once they're actually doing the things that they're gonna do.
Yeah, 100%. A couple other news and notes before we kind of wrap things up. One is that Kellen Moore did announce the Saints are going back to Southern California for at least part of training camp. Last year was almost the whole thing. I think it was 24 days. This year it's 10 days, 9 or 10 days. And it's basically like 4 or 5 days before the Chargers preseason game and then 4 days after. So I don't know. I kind of like the change of scenery for training camp. I know you guys like it too because you're not out in New Orleans heat. But it'll be the same place. It'll be at UC Irvine. So I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
I was interested in the fact that they're not doing joint practice with the Chargers. It's just going to be, just regular practice. So to me, that kind of stood out. And I know the players will be glad to get away. And you're not away from your family for too long. So it's that was a good balance there. You get away from the heat and you're just gone for 10 days.
My wife is very happy I'm not going to be gone for 4 weeks this time.
Right.
I think she was about ready to do an arson at the Times-Picayune office for me being gone for that long. Just kidding. Police investigators. That was not actually a thing. But yeah, I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with like the golf outing, right? It's just like an opportunity just to get these guys isolated to where they're just hanging out with their teammates and they're just focusing on football. But they're not doing it for the entirety of camp. I think just doing it for like a 9-day total period, and they've got a preseason game breaking that up. I think it's a good way to do that. Just little extra bonding time.
The Dodgers are also home for the whole time we're there, and they technically have a road trip
to Anaheim.
You guys have already made the rounds checking on things to do.
The Saints can bond on the road, and so can the Times-Picayune at ballparks. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like it. I also think an important factor here is that last year one of the criticisms was, and to be clear, last year they had no choice. The facility was under construction. They could not have had training camp there. But this gives Saints fans a chance to go out to Airline Drive, see them play, see them practice, and then also gives the team a chance to kind of have this bonding time, get out of the hot weather. So maybe best of both worlds.
I'm for it.
Okay, so training camp will start before that. I think that's August 6th through the 15th. Training camp will start, 12, 14 days before that, last week of July here. As we go into training camp, I wanted to finish up here. What big concerns do you still have? Obviously, we kind of joke about these May and June off-season periods being so optimistic about everything and everything looks good because you're just practicing against yourself or against air. What did you not see an answer to, or did you see an answer you didn't like to?
Well, I mean, we haven't seen either of these fronts, or really for that matter, just like the run game generally.
I was going to throw out backup running back. Like I still don't.
Right. I mean, all we've seen is a little bit of pass protection and some route running, and I don't think you can really get a sense of what these guys are doing drills. I keep having somebody ask me about Marcus Yarns, and I can't really say much about it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We just haven't seen anything. We haven't seen a single running play that's not a walkthrough. So, like, that's such an important part of what this team's going to be this year is their play up front. I think it was fine last year on the offensive side, despite all the injuries they dealt with. It was okay. It wasn't great, but for what they had to go with, it was fine. And I think it was bad on the defensive side. Can they see some market improvement with some of the investment they've made, whether it's Devon Godshaw as a run plug nose tackle, Vernon Broughton as a third-round pick, obviously Kelvin Banks on the offensive line. Like, can they get better there? If they can get better there, they could be kind of a pesky team. Like, you could see a chance for this to be pretty good on the fronts on both sides. But like, if it's just stagnant, even with the new scheme and the investments, and like, it could be really, really ugly. I think that's just the truth. It's like football 101, like you got to win in the trenches if you're going to win anything.
I would say the depth is kind of just in general across the roster is a big question mark for me. And the way I'm kind of looking at it is think about the outside expectation for this team, like odds makers, like people who think like people view this as the worst roster in the NFL or in contention for the number one pick. And for that to actually materialize, I think it would be when, like, if some of these guys actually had to play, like, backup-wise. Like, this is not a shot at him. I've actually thought he looked pretty good in OTAs, but, like, a guy like Terrell Burgess, like, if that guy actually makes the roster or has, like, a meaningful role for them, then, like, I just think it drops off fast. And you can say that about a lot of teams, but I think the margin for error here is pretty big.
Yeah, Ted Rath might be the most important guy in the building this year.
No new injuries in minicamp that we know of, right? I mean, that's
just minor stuff.
Yeah, that's one good thing. Anything else, Rod? I thought about, you guys mentioned Chase Young trying to cover a running back. I still think there's some of these defensive fits are like questionable at best.
Yeah, I think they're to be clear, like they are definitely like in phase one of this roster. Mm-hmm. Like reset, right? Like they couldn't do a complete makeover on that side of the ball. It was just impossible. So like they've done like bits and pieces of it, and there's still going to be pieces that like just don't fit what they're trying to do, because they are making a big change. But I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, that's fine. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that's definitely one of the biggest concerns. Trevor Penning is going to continue to be a concern because we just don't know yet. I mean, we just haven't seen anything yet out of it, from him. So, yeah, I mean, those would be my two biggest. And the one thing I think I've learned the most in this camp is just I think the quarterbacks, I think Spencer has made some progress, which I think is a good thing. I don't know if that doesn't, like, up my win total from 5 to 7 or anything like that. But I just think it is promising to see that he's gotten better.
I think we're trying to give you guys honest takeaways. There's a lot we don't know still. So let's wait for training camp. We got 5-6 weeks before that begins, and we'll have a lot more takeaways then. For me, I think just overarching, maybe my idea of what this team's ceiling has risen a little bit. I don't think the floor has. I still think the floor is pretty low if things don't go right or if there's injuries. But maybe if everything comes together and you squint hard enough, you can kind of see, okay, I could maybe see how this could work better than I thought it could. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, like I think Like, I think I've felt that way all along. I think they've got two really good play callers who are proven. And they've got some interesting pieces. It is going to depend on their lines and whether one of these quarterbacks can be like a functional NFL quarterback,
And
which
whether-
I think is that's like a big ask for what they've got in that quarterback room, and I think that's why the expectations are so depressed for this team. It is the depth, but it is like they're looking at Tyler Shough and Spencer Rattler as their two options,
fair.
and they're like, well, why would anybody pick that team to be, better than like a 5-win
It's a
team?
quarterbacks league.
Did the win totals come out when Carr was still when people thought Carr was still going to be the roster or that
I
starter?
think there were some early ones, but they weren't available everywhere. But I want to say it went from 7.5 to like 5.5 at that point. So that's about right, I think. And until that question is answered, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty with this team. Yeah, so that's where we are too. Okay, that will do it for us today. We will be back with more Saints Insider next week. Our producer was Norman Bell. He's Rod Walker. Luke Johnson and Matthew Paris, and I'm Zach Ewing. Thank you for watching.